We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It's Monday. We're starting out another week. Donald Trump's criminal trial in the Manhattan District starts back up again. We've got Michael Cohen back on the stand. I think the defense is going to finish up. Then there'll be a redirect from the prosecution. And then, of course, the defense will have to put on their case. And whether they're going to call witnesses or not, we don't know. We don't know if Donald Trump is going to be on the witness stand. He says he is. Lawyers are a little dubious about that idea, but apparently they haven't come to a decision as to whether or not Donald Trump will be on the witness stand. Now, if I'm his lawyers or anybody with any sense, you would not put him on the witness stand. But we know that Donald Trump controls everything, even his lawyers. So if he feels pressured or he thinks he can pull this thing out, which he can't, he may end up on the witness stand. And all I have to say is, if Donnie, you don't show up on the witness stand, you're a pussy ass bitch. So get up there and show us your oratory magicianship. I would fucking love that. I got to tell you, I got a little bit of a late start tonight because I always record this anywhere from 9:30 to 11:30 at night. But tonight it got to be a little bit of a late start. My wife and I went out to a local casino where they had a radio station that she likes, had a watch party for the um, Minnesota Timberwolves playing the Denver Nuggets in Game 7. It was a big game, and we sat there the first half, boy, and it did not look good. Timberwolves were down by 20, but they came back and they fucking won Game 7 over the defending Denver Nuggets, defending world champion Denver Nuggets. It was an exciting night. You know, I'm not a huge basketball fan, never really was. My wife has got me into it more. You know, some of my kids played basketball. My grandson played basketball. So I got into it more. But I never really expected much out of the Timberwolves. I mean, I was here when the inception of the Timberwolves came. They haven't done much in 30 plus years that they've been here. Although 20 years ago last night, they did win a Game 7 with Kevin Garnett. So it was kind of an interesting anniversary. Nonetheless, people in Minnesota are very excited about this, seeing this happen. We got the new superstar kid, Anthony Edwards, Ant, as they call him, Carl Anthony Towns and those folks. But they won Game 7. It's pretty exciting. And you know, the thing that's most exciting for me about this is that this town isn't known for championships. We've had some good teams. We've had playoff teams in all different sports, but we really haven't had this excitement since 1987 and 1991 when the Twins won the World Series twice in a row. And I'm glad for the sake of my kids and other young people that are connected to us to be able to experience this, because when it happened in 87 or 91, they were either too young or weren't even born yet. So they don't understand what it's like. You know, year after year, you have teams that always pull the rug out from under you. And that's kind of what happens all the time in Minnesota. So to get a team that's playing as well as it's playing and going to the Western Conference Finals, that's a big deal. That's a big deal here. And I'm happy for them. And I'm happy for all of us. It's nice to have a winner for once in Minnesota. Anyway, I started late, so if I seem a little tired, that may be why. I'll try to fake it, though. I usually do. I've done this tired before, so no biggie. The good news is in spite of the fact that I'm tired, I have a lot of emails to get through. We'll get to some other stuff, but we have a lot of emails, and that always makes the show more interesting, certainly for me, and I think for you too. So let's get started. First one says, hello, Boomer and Boomer Brigade. It's been a bit since my last email. I've been consulting with George Soros, Nancy Pelosi, and Obama to launch a terrorist attack at the next Trump rally by putting Bud Light in all the water bottles and putting super glue in Donnie's diaper with the help of the lizard people. Well, at least you've got a plan, and it sounds good. Anyway, I saw your video titled Don't. Not more than 5 minutes later, my phone showed a news story that there are numerous posts calling for violence against Marshawn and the prosecution on True Social. It was being blamed on his rhetoric and probably being spurred on by his surrogate. Seriously, I think you're basically right, but it may be too late. I think if the situation gets worse, and it can, he must go to jail, and this time be charged for inciting a riot in addition to the existing charges. Personally, I feel we're building up to something, and all precautions and preparation should be made. Like you said, they're on the ropes and desperate. A dangerous scenario. We saw it yesterday on the floor of the House. It was comical, but also very dangerous. The cult is obviously reaching the boiling point. They know and fear what's coming. Considering Marge's behavior yesterday, one has to think there must be some heavy duty meetings with those freaks behind closed doors. Nothing should be put past these people. I was going to comment on the situation that occurred in the House yesterday and how this form of government is completely outdated and needs to change. I feel that because of this whole mess, the change is coming and it's going to be a very difficult time. It will turn out for the best, I'm certain, but be prepared for very tough going. Go Boomer vote because our lives depend on it, especially the young folks. All the best, Z Man. And Z Man, I think you nailed it. You nailed it on that one. I think that's true. I'm dubious about the idea that there's going to be another January 6th attack. I don't think they can pull together enough people to create something like that. Um, they can't get a crowd at the trial. In fact, I got a funny story about the crowd, the Trumplafuck crowd, um, at the trial. We'll talk more about that later. But um, you're right. When you get somebody cornered, when you corner a rat, they do tend to take risks, take chances because they've got no choice and they become very dangerous. The thing that saves me a little concern with the Trumplafucks, they're not a very organized or a very bright crew. Now, keep in mind, everybody says, what happened January 6th? It was a much different situation then because they had professional coordinators, professional helpers, meaning sitting members of Congress, Ginny Thomas, Roger Stone. They aren't in the mix anymore because they know it's pointless with Joe Biden in office. You will see some individuals or small groups of people trying to pull some shit, and it does need to be recognized, acknowledged, and dealt with. I agree with you 100%. I don't know. We just need to get this trial done. And then when the convictions are made, I think that changes everything. It takes a lot of wind out of the sails of the Trumplafucks and the Republicans in general. I'm hoping that's true. All right. Thank you, Z Man. I appreciate it. Next one starts out. Good morning, Boomer, and greetings to the land of the free, especially North Carolina. What the fuck? Illegal to wear mask in public, including for medical requirements. So much for freedom. All my life, if someone wanted to wear a mask, a paper bag over their head, or a top hat, cape, and cane in public, no one cared. It was kind of a sideshow. Anti maskers were twisted up having to wear one in public and screamed, I know my rights, freedom. What now of the folks who wear masks for health reasons, kink, or because they think they're Batman? Honestly, comparing life in the 70s and 80s, this decade is headed to a 1984 dystopia, not run by Big Brother, but a bunch of tainted and misguided children. Illegal to wear a mask in public, but okay to open carry. Truly just another red state of confusion. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, this this is really kind of annoying because it just so shows how um, big a pussies they are. It's not enough that you um, have a choice as to wear a mask. Now you can't wear a mask. How about we make another law where you can't wear a red hat? How about we wear another law where you can't wear a shirt or carry a flag that's desecrated with the face of Donald Trump. How about that? Those things seem to be something to consider. But as I say, once we get past the election, a lot of things are going to change. This is like a boil bubbling up and ready to pop. It's getting bigger and redder and more irritated, but eventually it's going to go away. And it's going to be unpleasant for a lot of people. It's not going to be easy. I said that when Donald Trump won the presidential election in 2016. I said he will destroy the Republican Party. He might even destroy the whole system of our government. And I also said it may not be a bad idea given the way our government's going, but building it back is going to be incredibly painful. I'm hoping that I'm half right there. Well, I think I'm already half right. He has destroyed the Republican Party. Bears no resemblance to what we've ever seen with the Republican Party. As far as destroying the system, I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to destroy the Republican Party. It already has. It's going to change a lot of things in our government and how they're done and how they're perceived by the people. For the longest time, people have been apathetic and haven't paid attention. Well, they're paying attention now. And with that attention, there's certainly going to come some change. And I can only think it's going to be positive. As Paul said, it might be painful, but it'll be well worth the effort. I don't usually drink pop when I'm doing this. I usually drink water. Pop makes me burp, and I'd rather not do that if I can avoid it. I'll do my best. All right, the next one says, "Hi, Mike. I have an important message for all Republicans out there. With the announcement of a debate between twice impeached felony charged Donald Trump and the Honorable Joe Biden, any other outcome than an orange overlord win would be fake news, a hoax, and a witch hunt. True Republicans know that Joe Biden will push forward policies such as more equality for American citizens, keeping a strong middle class, more accessibility to health care, help to our allies in the world, shift the country towards clean energy, and all that pointless drivel. Donald Trump will stick to what is really important to every American, keeping him rich, chasing all of his political opponents, being a dictator, selling classified information to our enemies, cut down women's rights, and break the law whenever he sees fit. That is what America is all about. Go MAGA." Of course, that comes from Panzer with a hint of sarcasm. But he adds a PS. He says, "I sent you another true and important message last Monday, but for some reason it didn't get through. Since you kindly care for Republicans like I do, here is a repeat. It's a little outdated, but oh so important." All right, with Stormy Daniels' convincing testimony, the Mushroom Head conspiracy revealing an unfavorable aspect of Donald Trump's male anatomy, Americans should know that this is fake news, a hoax, and a witch hunt. True Republicans know that the case is already won for Mr. Trump. His lawyers just need now to make him drop his pants, his diapers, and all the other layers in front of the jury to prove it's a rigged trial. It cannot fail. He will then capitalize on this colossal lie by introducing adult versions of his NFT cards, either as a huge cowboy, a huge spaceman, a huge vegetable, a huge saggy orange, showing all of his glory to the finest. That will please every woman in this country, and hopefully even more merchandise after that. Who says that this business genius is going broke? Thanks again, Mike, for exposing Democrats' realism, kindness, and the rational thinkers that they are. Go MAGA, Panzer. All right. We all know about Panzer. He loves the satire. He loves the sarcasm. And we do too. Thank you, Panzer. Panzer, I would like you to explain to us where you got the name Panzer. The only thing I know of a Panzer was a German tank in World War II. So next time you write an email, give us some sense as to how you got that name or how you chose that name. All right, this one comes from Margie, and this was not that Margie, a different Margie, and it was a post on the podcast page, so it's a little out of context here. She says, interesting, but I disagree with your opinion about Cohen. I agree with Cohen being shamed for being Trump's fixer after 13 months in jail. He has turned over a new leaf and he owns his mistakes. Okay. And I said that Michael Cohen was a piece of shit. I He may have turned over a new leaf. That's possible. Maybe he's had a come to Jesus meeting with Jesus, even though he's Jewish. But anyway, yeah, either that or he knows what he needs to do to win in this effort. I'm always questioning whether or not somebody who is as horrible as he was and as Donald Trump is and how my father was and how other people are, they know how to play the game. They know how to charm people. They're very aware of what they need to say to get people's approval. And I can't say that I'm sold that he's completely changed. It doesn't matter to me if he's completely changed. As far as I'm concerned, after giving this testimony, he's inconsequential. It's now up to him to create his own career, his own future based on what he's done. I don't really care that much about Michael Cohen. I hope he helped to sink Donald Trump. And after that, fuck, I don't care what he does. Um, he'll be around for a while. The podcast is pretty popular and people like him. And I don't dislike him. I just don't trust people like him turning over a new leaf. I've never really seen it happen. I've seen people who try to make it look like they do, but do they really? I got to think spending all that time in jail, if something is going to turn you around, that would probably be it. So maybe you're right, Margie. Let's hope you're right. All right, the next one says, hi, Mike. The little men's club where Clarence Thomas likes to go in Northern California is called, I believe, the Bohemian Club and the Bohemian Grove. I knew someone many years ago who was a member there and was the typical rich white questionable man. Questionable because he pretended to be a family man but wasn't. And perhaps he pretended to be straight but perhaps he wasn't. I can only imagine what goes on in that place. If you're looking for an entertaining and funny podcast, I suggest Ear and Loathing. If you like music, good and bad, if you like to laugh, it is one of my favorites. Thanks for sharing your views with the rest of us. Have a great day, Gabrielle. Thank you, Gabrielle. I'll check out the podcast. All right. Next one starts out, you are so right about being and thinking positively. My daughter had cancer. When she was diagnosed, her husband was fired from his job. They didn't want to pay for his insurance, so they fired him and she lost her insurance coverage. She was eligible for COBRA at $846 a month. They didn't have that kind of money. My husband asked me what we were going to do. I smiled and I said, I'll write a cookbook. But my poor husband thought I lost my mind. I wrote a cookbook and bound them myself with the help from family and friends. They began to sell immediately. People were buying 10 and giving them as gifts. It went so well, we were able to pay her COBRA insurance for a year. That was $846 a month for 12 months. When sales slacked, I wrote a sequel. Again, we paid her insurance for the second year. At the end of the year, her medical expenses were covered. Her chemo ran $50,000 each, and she had about 70 some odd chemotherapies. I truly believe that if I had not been so positive in believing that this was my way of helping her, it wouldn't have gone the way it did. Stay positive, as I know you do. Things will work out. My daughter passed away in 2010. I'm sorry to hear that. She had an extremely rare and uncurable cancer called synovial sarcoma. It's incurable, but she was able to fight it for 8 years. Love your show. Keep it up, Peggy. Well, thank you, Peggy, and I'm sorry for your loss. And Peggy's absolutely right. She believed in herself. She knew she had something there and nothing to stop her. She had nothing to lose. So she just went ahead and did it. I think I've talked about this before and I've tried to pass it on to other people, but I don't think people believe me. But I know it's true because I use it myself. And as we just heard in the story, Peggy used it herself too. Somebody once said, what you think, what you say, and what you focus on is what you'll get. That's why it's important to keep things positive, have confidence in yourself. Mine wasn't so dramatic, but the idea of being on TikTok and doing a podcast starting from zero, like Peggy did with the cookbook. Nobody in their right mind would try that because they wouldn't think that it would work out. But if you believe you can do it and you put in the work, it doesn't happen instantaneously, but it does happen. You put in the work and you will get there. Now, the problem is people in their minds usually go to the negative. Oh, this will never work for me. Oh, this will never happen for me. And that's what you end up getting. I've said this before. When I was younger, I had a hair trigger temper, like a lot of young men do. And I realized that it wasn't working for me. It was making things worse. So I said, I got to try something different. And the opposite would be to stay calm and not get so excitable. Well, that's easy enough to say, but it's impossible to switch overnight what you've done all of your life. But what you've done all of your life, you've trained yourself to do. So theoretically, you can train yourself to do something else. So I trained myself to stay calm in every situation, no matter how bad it was. And things did work out better. And as they worked out better, it gave me more confidence to continue what I was doing. And over time, it becomes second nature. And now I don't lose my temper. I don't fly off the handle, and I'm better for it. But the key is you've got to retrain what's in your mind. Now, there's all kinds of people out here will talk about manifestation and all that stuff. And I don't know about that. I don't necessarily buy into it. I don't think anything ever um, takes off that quickly, as some people would suggest. But every day in the morning and every day at night, I say a few things out loud just to set the tone. I'll say something like, I am who I am. That's enough. I'll do that like 3 times. Then I'll say, everything I do works out for the best for me. I say that 3 times. I also say, I'm healthy, happy, and strong 3 times. Now I'm putting that out in the ether. I'm putting that in my head. I'm retraining my mind to think differently. And you can scoff at it. You can talk shit about it, but I'm just going to tell you it works. What's going on out in front of you is coming from your mind. You can create your own destiny, as it were. Now, like I say, a lot of people will say, I got trouble now. I need it fixed right away. So they'll say that 3 times. It doesn't work. And they'll say, of course, it doesn't work. You didn't train your mind overnight. It took years. It took decades to be where you are. So it takes a little work and a little time to do that. But what have you got to lose? What have you got to fucking lose? Try it. Try it. And you don't have to use what I say. You just use whatever you want to say in what you need. Now, don't go out and say, I want a brand new Maybach Mercedes. Just, like for example, if you're talking about money, if I'm talking about money, what I would say is money continually flows to me. I always have more than enough. I'm not asking for the world. I'm just asking for some freedom and some um, less stress in my life. But by doing that, you retrain your mind to think differently, and then you're more likely to get those things to come to you. Peggy found that out. I found that out. All of you can find that out too. Now, if I can just get my sons to understand that, and my wife to understand that, I'd be doing something. But nobody wants to hear what dad or grandpa has to say because he's just a fucking old man. Anyway, next up, we have another email. We have a bunch of emails. Good afternoon. Want to take a day trip to an alternate universe where Republicans actually have a strategy, an effective one? Now that we've arrived, notice the purple skies and the pink sand. Now, in this universe, Republicans are deviously competent. The dear leader is still a moronic narcissist, but has taken complete control of the party. The difference in this universe is the Republicans have a plan. They need to appear publicly to be fully enthralled with the leader, even though the leader is mentally unstable and getting worse by the minute. The powers that be have decreed that the leader must select a senator from a southern state with a different skin tone as his heir apparent and convince the leader that this will ensure his victory. The leader does so, and on the day of the great battle, the universe sneezes and the Republicans win. On the day the leader is invested and his advisors have been chosen for him, the advisors conspire to invoke the 24th amendment, claiming the dear leader is incapable of performing his duties. That's actually the 25th Amendment, but I get what you're saying. His heir apparent, who is even less intelligent than the leader, but just as easily manipulated, but infinitely more controllable, is in place to push through the powers that be agenda, while the minions decry the accusations of being racist by pointing to their usurpers saying, see, we're not racist. We elect a non-white president, just like the enemy did. Keep up the fight, Stephanie. I understand your point, and it's a nicely written story. And that may be what they're thinking. That may be what they're thinking. However, putting Tim Scott as vice president isn't going to overcome all the other shit, like overturning Roe v. Wade, multiple felony charges. Tim Scott can't get elected president. Donald Trump would have to get elected president, and he has zero chance. I'm just telling you that right now. He has zero chance of winning. Nobody can tell me in specific terms how Donald Trump gets to win the presidency. Anytime somebody tells me he's going to win, it's all about emotion. It's all about emotion and reactionary activity. And that doesn't work. It never works. That may be their plan, Stephanie, but like every other plan they've had to date, they ain't going to win. I think that the Republicans are destined to get wiped out in 2024. I'm a firm believer in destiny. We've gone through a lot of shit since 2016, more shit than we could ever imagine would happen. And because of that, there has to be a switch, a turning point. There has to be a pivot, if you will. And that's coming. Everything is lining up for that to happen. Donald Trump couldn't be a worse candidate for president with all the things going against him. If this was a normal time and Donald Trump was a normal nominee, he wouldn't even be in the mix anymore. He's got too much baggage, too much bullshit hanging around his neck. He cannot get elected the way he's set himself up and the shit he's going through. I have to wonder sometimes if there are intelligent Republicans, if they know this and they figure they just got to burn down the forest so they can start replanting and regrowing a new forest and remake themselves, because that's really the only option they have, is to remake themselves. They are never going to win an election if they continue down this track, but they have to rid themselves of Donald Trump. Now, they could have easily done that after the inauguration of Joe Biden, but Kevin McCarthy got back in, gave Donnie a hand, and brought him back into the fold. And then he starts talking, and then he starts intimidating his own people into following him, regardless of whether or not they believe the bullshit he's spewing, or if they disagree with the criminality that he's doing. I think more than likely the Republicans are caught in a trap that they can't find a way out of. So now they just have to ride it out, let it crash and burn, and then see who survives after that happens. I really believe that's, the Mitch McConnells or some of the Republicans that have half a brain They know what's going to fucking happen. They can see it. If I can see it, they can see it. There is nothing that gives Donald Trump a chance to win in November, even if he picks Tim Scott or any other person of color. It really doesn't matter. He'd be better off picking Nikki Haley. She's also from South Carolina, and she's also from immigrant parents. But he will never do that because he's so butthurt about her not endorsing him and her kind of beating him a little bit at the polls. He'll never pick her. And even if he does, it won't work because I don't know that Nikki Haley would jump on board. As I've told you before, these people don't think Donald Trump will take them to the promised land. I honestly believe what they think is that Donald Trump ain't going to make it, either physically, mentally, or legally. He won't make it to November. And they want to be the one standing at the top of the heat when they have to scramble and get a new candidate. That's what I honestly believe they're doing. Nobody really wants to tie themselves to Donald Trump permanently because he's done nothing but fail. He's done nothing but lose. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But Stephanie, I appreciate your input, and you make some interesting points. And if I thought the Republicans had just a shred of intelligence and decency, I'd say you might be onto something. But I think you were kind of insinuating the fact that this may be what they have in their minds, and this may be the way they think the scenario will play out. But even you and I both know that's not going to happen. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. All right, we are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. We have plenty more emails. And this next one comes from Old Soul. She wasn't with us last week. She was with us twice the week before. She should be with us this week coming up Thursday or so. So we're looking forward to that. But nonetheless, she sends us an email and she says, "Hey, Boomer, have you seen that the RNC is suing Nevada? Most of Nevada votes by mail. Our ballots are counted as long as it postmarked by election night. They are saying if ballots are not counted by election day, they won't count. They want to toss any ballots received after election night, even if it's postmarked pre-election night. I'm pissed. They want to stop the counting of votes. This is anti-American and anti-democratic. Thanks for what you do, Old Soul." Hadn't heard about that, but not surprised in the least. They're still pushing this um, election hoax, election denier bullshit. I don't know how they'll do in court with that. I really honestly don't. Um, but like I said, we're dealing with Republicans now, and they are frantic and they are upset and they are concerned. They're cornered rats. So they're going to pull out the stops. They're going to try to do everything. Um, and as I say, I'm a believer in destiny. I look at what the Republicans have tried in the last 3.5 years, and they failed every time. I don't have any reason to believe that they're going to do any better this time around. I think we're getting closer to the end for the Republican Party, the MAGA group, and Donald Trump. And I would hope that judges and courts can see that and understand that there'll be some retribution if they play this game. And that retribution could come sometime soon, given the election is in about 6 months. We'll see what happens. And Old Soul, we're looking forward to having you back on the program. All right, the next one comes from Jay. He says, "Hiya, Mike. It's me again, Jay from California. As a Gen Z with absolutely no chill or patience for Trumplafucks, I put forth some counters to the bogus labels they often hit me with, namely libtard and democrat. Well, how about these gems? Conservative. Con is accentuated. Repugnacance. Because today's Republican Party is a repugnant and B, can't govern worth a shit or do anything productive or meaningful. There's some new vocab for you when talking about Trumplafucks. Jay. Well, thank you, Jay. I appreciate it. Um, it's hard for me sometimes, whenever I've been on the air someplace and I do something the same way all the time, and somebody says, well, now do this. It takes a while for me to incorporate new words into my regular repartee. I'll do what I can. Um, I happen to like Trumplafucks a lot, and I'm going to keep using Trumplafucks, but I think you make some valid points in the new words to be used for Trumplafucks. And of course, any of you listening in the audience are more than welcome to use Trumplafucks or the ones that Jay suggested. All right. Boomer, I emailed you a few weeks ago. You read my email on your podcast. You said if I would like to be on your podcast to reach out. So that is what I'm doing. Your podcast really resonates with me. I'm an enrolled agent with the IRS and actually knew what that was. I would love to talk about anything: healthcare, taxes, death, and hospice, and the unfairness in the legal system. Really, anything. And then she gave me her phone number, which I will not give on the show here for obvious reasons. Her name is Janice. And Janice, I'll just tell you this. I'll tell you what I tell everybody. I don't need your phone number. And I don't really set up appointments initially for guests. All you got to do, Janice, is send me an email and say, Mike, I'm ready to come on the show. And then that's all you have to do. And then at that point, we work out a time frame when we can do it, when we both can do it. But I don't typically reach out to people and say, hey, would you be a guest on the show today? I don't do that. Um, if people want to be on and they come to me, I put them on. If they don't, I do what you're hearing right now. Either way, it's fine. But Janice, we'd love to have you on the show. We can talk about a number of things. Just send me an email at rationalboomer@gmail.com. Tell me when you're ready, and then let's just do it. All right, the next one comes from Margie. We heard from her earlier. She said, I'm originally from Austin, Minnesota. Yes, home of Hormel. Austin, Minnesota is in the southern part of the state. It is the home of Hormel Meats and also the home of Spam. Now, a lot of people look sideways at Spam, but when I was growing up, we ate Spam. My mom would grind it up and make Spam salad sandwiches. Or the thing that my brother and I liked so much was when we were growing up, we had a gas stove. Now, we lived in the inner city, so we didn't go camping a lot. But she would take the gas stove and turn on one of the burners, give us these long forks with a piece of Spam on the end, and we cook it over the stove as if we were cooking it over a fire. I don't know, that might sound crazy to you, but for my brother and I, that was cool as fuck. Now, Margie goes on to say, then I lived in Washington State, now Houston, Texas. I only found you a few months ago and appreciate what you do in a real down home way. Thank you. Well, thank you, Margie. I appreciate it immensely. Down home, I don't, you could maybe call it casual. You could maybe call it lazy. I sit down and I fucking talk. That's all I do about whatever topics and talk with people who come on the show and read emails. So I appreciate it. If it resonates with you, I am happy as heck. I didn't know that anything I did would resonate with anybody. So to have significant numbers of people listening is a blessing to me, and I'm very grateful for it. So thank you. Next one starts out, hey, Boomer, I was watching Real Time with Bill Maher over the weekend, and he said something that was so incredibly against reality, I think. He said Joe Biden took the debate because he knows he's losing, and all the polls say he's losing and blah, blah, blah. The biggest problem with our so-called Democrats is that they talk shit about their own choice that they are supposedly for. I see this time and time again. I never see Republicans talking shit about Trump, even when they know Trump is the biggest loser and unstable narcissist. They keep their mouths shut no matter what. This is why I believe that Democrats get this label that they are wishy-washy and weak. I just wanted to I just wanted to know what you think about that. I always look forward every day to your podcast. Thank you, Rhonda. Rhonda, I tend to agree with you. And if you listen to the show or you listen to my TikToks, you know how annoyed I get with people who are these gloom and doomers. Oh, the polls are bad. Joe Biden's going to win. Donald Trump has a chance. But that's all emotions. That's all reactionary. That's what people who have had a tough life or been abused or something like that, in their minds, they think, it's always gone bad for me. We always lose. This guy always wins. So that's just the way it's going to be. And I always suggest that it's like pouting. I'm mad that it doesn't turn out my way. So I'm just going to say, fuck it. It's going to be bad all over the place. And they think they're doing something with that. I think deep down people do that in order to get a reaction. You know, when somebody comes up, oh, my life's so tough. I have this, I have that. This is going against me. I think what they really are intending to do, it's a bit of manipulation. And what they're intending to do is get somebody to save them. They're asking somebody to save them from this pain and sorrow. The problem with these folks is once they get some resolution or some or some success with something they thought would turn out bad, they just come up with another thing down the road that's bad too. Their whole life is thinking about what's going to fall next. And that goes back to what I was saying before. If you think like that, that's probably what you're going to get. If you think more positively, and instead of being emotional and looking at making reactions, look at the facts. I've said that before. That's the only difference between me and a lot of people. I don't get emotional about it. I don't worry about things that I can't control. That's no point. I assume the best. But in order for me to maintain that mental state, I dig deep. I look at the facts. I don't trust the stories I hear in the media. I don't trust it at all. So I dig deep and I try to find a way out. I try to find an angle. And almost every time I find that angle. Trust me, if I come across something and there is just no hope, I'm going to tell you. But I'm also going to tell you there's no hope on this. This is going to happen. Here's what we've got to do next. There's always an angle. There's always an angle. There's always a way out. And that's something um, that you have to remember and keep in your mindset. Otherwise, you're destined to trials and tribulations and disasters and Armageddon and all that shit. You don't need that. You don't need to worry about it. 98% of the things you fucking worry about don't even happen. So that should tell you something. Thank you, Rhonda. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Next one says, hi, Mike. I agree with your intuition about the outcome of the coming November USA election, but the Lincoln Project is not as convinced. The change in Biden messaging style and tone suggested by UC Berkeley's Stephen Fish sounds like a very prudent and cunning refinement. Biden needs to take a much more dominant leadership stance and not be so accommodating to those who propose dictatorship. We stand for individual freedoms and helping people bootstrap themselves for the benefit of all. No need to comment on my email. I would much rather that you read the book and comment on its conclusions. It's refreshingly brilliant. Best wishes, Chris. So he says, I don't need to respond to the email. What the fuck do you think I'm going to do? Of course, I'm going to respond to it. I haven't read the book, so I can't critique the book. I don't know the man, so I can't critique the man. He's probably very brilliant. But I think it's a little outdated. The idea that they're saying about Joe Biden, who's more laid back and more prudent and all that stuff, that is true. But if you're watching the news, if you're watching Joe Biden now, you can see that change. You know, like when he accepted the debate and he said, I hear you have Wednesdays open. Or when he went after him in the State of the Union or in other speeches. I think Joe Biden is getting more aggressive as he can get for his age and the fact that he's kind of a centrist. But I don't think Joe Biden has to go overboard. I mean, that's just how bad a shape Donald Trump is in. I think any Republican or any Democrat could beat Donald Trump at this point. I do. Donald Trump is just a fucking tainted piece of shit. You can't come up with anything good about Donald Trump. And I can come up with pages and pages of things that are bad that make him not a quality candidate for president. I can't say I'll read the book because I don't read a lot of books. I listen to audiobooks a lot. If they've got one of those, I may listen to it. But from the beginning of what you said, um, you said it's a prudent and cunning refinement. Biden needs to take a much more dominant leadership stance and not be so accommodating to those who propose dictatorship. Okay. Well, here's the thing. He is ramping it up a little bit. But here's what I know about messaging and talking. If all of a sudden he changes and becomes this beast, people won't perceive that as authentic. People won't believe it. They'll think he's playing a game or he's trying to compete with Donald Trump. Joe Biden does need to ramp it up slowly but surely, but not so much because that isn't going to be the determining factor as to whether he wins or not. The fact that Donald Trump is sinking is the big factor in whether Joe Biden will win. Now, listen to what I said. I'm not saying Joe Biden's the greatest candidate in the world and he's going to beat Donald Trump because he's so great. I'm saying Joe Biden has to be steady. He has to be straightforward. He has to do what he's doing with maybe a little more needling of Donald Trump because he hates it so bad. This election, like the 2020 election, is going to come down to people who are scared of the prospect of Donald Trump becoming president. That's going to determine who wins this election, just like it did in 2020. Joe Biden wasn't the quintessential candidate in 2020, but he won by 7 million votes. I contend those 7 million votes were probably more afraid of Donald Trump than they loved Joe Biden. Now, I'm not trying to put Joe Biden down here. The fact is, that's a good advantage to have. If we get people who love Joe Biden and people scared of Donald Trump, well, then it's not even fucking close. So, um, anybody that says Joe Biden's in trouble right now, I disagree with, and I don't think they're paying attention, and they're not looking at the facts that are sitting right in front of our faces. All right. The next one says, "Hi, Mike. I'll have to disagree with something you suggested on TikTok." Cool. That being that the election of Supreme Court justices, as much as it seems like a good idea, there are multiple issues with it. I'll just let folks know. I was doing a TikTok, and in this TikTok, I was explaining the reason that Supreme Court justices were appointed for lifetime terms was to keep them from being political or partisan, you know? That's what it was supposed to do. But clearly, we are here now, and they are more partisan and more political than we could have ever imagined. And the suggestion I made is, well, fuck it. Then at that point, why don't we just put them up for election and let the people decide? Now, on the surface, that sounds great, and I understand uh, the negative things about it, and I know that's not ever going to get done. When I said that, I didn't mean it as I expected anybody to do that or even that become an option. I was trying to make the point that all those years ago, our forefathers tried to put in place a situation with the Supreme Court justices to avoid them being political and partisan. And here we are, and just the opposite is happening. So it was kind of an attitude, fuck off, well, then just get you elected. Because I know that would drive them nuts. I know that's not going to happen. It was just something I was throwing out as a comparison more than as a suggestion. But I understand why you think it's a suggestion. That's the one problem you have when you do what I do. If you're sarcastic or if you're just supposing. If you don't put the right accentuation on it, people believe you believe wholeheartedly with what you say. I was making a knowing comparison. I know that's not going to happen. And I know that's not necessarily a good idea. But let's go on because you have some good insights here. First, you will have the justices rule differently in election years to try and save their jobs and get elected again. True. You mean like the judge, the federal judge down in Georgia? Old Soul pointed that out. Second, unless you do something like something big like overturn Roe v. Wade or establish a new right or something most people don't pay attention to in the Supreme Court. We're only paying attention now because the news is so horrendous and they are so corrupt. Prior to 2016, we didn't pay a lot of attention to the Supreme Court, except when a new justice was appointed, and even then, just briefly. Third, you could end up with a smear campaign against a justice or justices. We have retention votes for Iowa Supreme Court justices. When the Iowa Supreme Court ruled a gay marriage ban unconstitutional and said that marriage to whoever you wanted was protected by the Constitution, there was a massive disinformation campaign. Republicans said the justices made up a ruling and it should have been left up to the legislature. Unfortunately, to many Iowans, they didn't know that the Supreme Court was ruling on something the legislature passed. The three justices that were up for re-election on the ballot were allowing same-sex marriage in the state got voted out. The smear campaign worked, and now we have a conservative court here in Iowa. I think a better alternative should be a term limit and only one term, something like 20 or 25 years max, maybe less, and still allow them to resign if they choose. They also should be an enforceable code. Yeah, I don't know about 20 or 25 years. That's too much of a free ride to give one person who may or may not be qualified. I would say 10 years max. I would say enforceable code of ethics. And when I say enforceable, by the legislature, not by themselves. But I get your point, and I think you're on the right track. Did you see that Fox News is saying Dirty Diaper Donnie should be convicted as early as Tuesday? They were saying that he could be jailed after conviction. I'm not holding out hope that he will be pending sentencing. However, I'd love to read the words Donald Trump could hereby ordered held until sentencing, bailiff take him away. I will settle for seeing he was convicted. Thanks, Eric. Well, the fact of the matter is he's not going to be in jail or even convicted by Tuesday, by tomorrow. That's not going to happen. We've got what's going on with Michael Cohen here, the redirect, and whatever's left of the defense's interrogation. Then after that, they have to put on their case. Now, they may not put on a case. That's true. And it could go to the jury as soon as Tuesday, but I doubt it. I really doubt it. But we could have a verdict by this week. I know there's some days off, so maybe not. Certainly by next week, that's distinctly possible, depending on how long the defense drags this out. We'll see. Eric, thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for calling me out on what I said. I did say it. I know it's not a reasonable option, but I was trying to make the point that you're trying to protect us from our Supreme Court from being political. It's not working anymore because people step over norms. They do whatever they can do. You know, for years, people didn't do that. They could be trusted to do the right and the decent thing. Well, those days are gone. Those days are gone, and we do have to come up with another answer. I don't think term limits are the absolute answer. I think the ethics code enforceable. I mean, I think we should even have a special body in Congress that specifically polices the Supreme Court. That may sound like a lot to do, but clearly we could have used it. They've pushed it over the edge. So now, as far as enforcement, we've got to crack down on it. It's just a matter of Congress can come up with some way to do that. All right, the next one comes from David in Seattle. Says, "Hi, Mike. I love your show and listen almost every day. I thought you should know that when Jason, he meant Jace, but his name is actually Jason, so you're cool. Jason from Texas comes on. He's really difficult to understand. I think it's his audio setup. You are crystal clear. Thanks for the time and effort you put into this, David in Seattle." I don't have any problem hearing Jace when he's on, but when we have people coming from their own homes, you have lighting issues, you have mic issues, and that sort of thing. Maybe there's something I can do to pump it up. I don't know. I don't do a lot of post production. That's because I'm lazy. And if I hear somebody with a low level on their mic, I'll usually say something to them to punch it up. Jason knows a lot about technology and about podcasts and stuff like that. So, um, Jace, you can consider that. Um, if you want some ideas about different mics or something like that, or a different way to do it, I know how to do it and I know how to do it cheap. So let me know. All right. Now we're getting toward the end of the podcast. And as I've said, there's a couple of things going on. We're just coming out of the weekend. So not a lot happened over the weekend, a little bit. One thing that did happen, though, that I was glad to see, House Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries criticized Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito for disrespecting the American flag and called for increased ethical standards for the High Court. Now, of course, a report by the New York Times on Thursday revealed that an upside down American flag could be seen flying outside Alito's home not long after the January 6th, 2021 insurrection on the Capitol. Now, Hakeem Jeffries said Sammy Alito should apologize immediately for disrespecting the American flag and sympathizing with right wing violent insurrectionists. And he was responding to the New York Times report. Alito told the Times that his wife put up the upside down flag after their neighbors used objectionable and personally insulting language on yard signs. She hung the flag in response to a dispute with neighbors over a lawn sign that blamed her for the January 6th riot, the justice told Fox News on Friday. I got to tell you, I'm not sad to hear that they're having troubles in their own neighborhood. They knew who Samuel Alito is, and they know his wife is kind of in the mix. Some of the sketchy shit that Sam Alito did, she did too, a la Bob Menendez and his wife. Look, man, you're a Supreme Court justice. You're corrupt, you're criminal, you're biased, you're looking to overthrow this government. Shouldn't be surprising to you that you're going to get some pushback. And blaming this on your wife is absolute bullshit because, as I've said on the podcast, I can imagine you coming home from a hard day of grifting at the Supreme Court, pulling in your driveway, seeing that flag, knowing every bit of what it meant, and not going in and saying, "Hey, honey, we should probably take that down. That doesn't look good. I'm a Supreme Court justice." But you didn't do that. So you're as responsible as she is. It's your yard, it's your house. You already have this reputation. I'm going to tell you this. There's been a lot of shit that's gone on with the Supreme Court, and the approval rating is at its lowest in history. Now, I think a lot of people like John Robert think, well, we'll just ride this out and it'll go away. Something like this happens, it's not going away. This is the worst nightmare of the Supreme Court. Something like this, it's proven with video, with pictures. He's got a lame excuse. He's clearly corrupt and criminal and biased. This isn't going to bode well for Justice Alito. Now, I don't know what can be done up until after the election, but this is, and, frankly, I don't expect Alito to apologize because then he'd have to admit he's wrong. I don't think anything's going to happen. I think he's going to continue doing what he's doing. I think they're all going to continue doing what they're doing because there's a certain amount of arrogance and elite attitude amongst these Supreme Court justices, and they need to be brought down a peg. Now, if I'm a smart man and I'm Judge Alito or Justice Alito, I can see what we were talking about before. The end of this fucking rainbow is coming soon. And when it does, they're going to have a lot different people to answer to, and it's not going to go well for them. You would think they would start backing down now to try to put them in a better situation come January of 2025, but they don't seem to do that. They're very belligerent. Like I say, they double down and triple down. Um, all we can say is Judge or Justice Alito, Justice Clarence Thomas, Kavanaugh, it's coming and it's not going to be pleasant. You had a chance to pull yourself out of the fire, but you chose not to. So all I can say is burn, baby, burn. Now, echoing a similar call made by Senator Durbin following the release of the Times report on Friday, Jeffrey said that Alito should recuse himself from cases involving the 2020 election and the January 6, 2021 insurrection. He also said Congress should immediately consider legislation to impose an ethical code of conduct on a runaway Supreme Court. The Constitution demands, and the American people deserve more from a justice serving on the highest court in the land. Now, we know, of course, the Supreme Court adopted their own ethics code, but there's no way to enforce it, so it isn't worth a shit, to be honest with you. There does need to be an ethics code. There does need to be a lot done with the Supreme Court, but as I've told you, because of the situation in the House, nothing is going to be done about the Supreme Court. I'm sorry to tell you that, but that's the case. Nothing is going to be done. That's why it's so important that in November we kick out the Republicans from the House and the Senate, and then we get to getting. We get to straightening out and cleaning house in the Supreme Court. How we do that, I don't know. But we got people in Congress getting paid $175,000 a year to figure that shit out. So they better figure it out because they'll be out on their ass if they don't. It's a tiring situation and it's tough to just sit and wait and wait and wait. But that's what we've got to do. Republicans refuse to do the right thing. They refuse to do fucking anything. So we just wait. As I've told you before, you can't worry about things that you can't control. And this is something we cannot control because you can't trust the Republicans to have any shred of integrity. So we do the best we can. We do the things that we can control and we ride this bitch out. And then come 2025 or come November of 2024, we fight like hell. We kick some ass. We take some names and we beat these motherfuckers. So we're in a position to make some fixes that are so sorely needed in this country and in the Supreme Court. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day and we will talk to you again tomorrow.